Well, like Tyler said, my name is Joey Schimnich, and can we just give another big round of applause to the high school students over here? Well, so this is a little Cessna 150 project. Let's just say it's been a big project, to say the least. So it started, we purchased this airplane back in May 19th, 2015. And it was the airplane that I was going to learn how to fly in, and I did. I got my private pilot's license in this airplane. I soloed in this airplane, and eventually I brought it up to A&P school. I was able to fly it for my first year of aircraft maintenance school, and then left it up there for the summer and came back, and it just wasn't running right. We had some issues with the airplane. So this is what it looked like before the paint job. It was blue and white. This was not what it's going to look like after it's done, but it's going to look newer than that. And I think this is about the time where I decided to start taking it apart. Now that right there is the reason why it came apart. This is a stud that goes into the engine, and up at the top you can see some lighter material on the threads. That is aluminum from the engine block. So that stud literally came out of the engine. The only way to repair the engine is actually to take the entire engine apart. So I was in a location that I couldn't do that in, at least not very well or effectively. So my two options were to A, sell the airplane, or B, take it apart. Tried selling it, and it just wasn't going to be sold at a good price, and the guy that would potentially buy it, I just wasn't feeling comfortable with him flying it, so I kept it, and we took it apart. This is what it looked like inside before we took it apart, and let's see here. That's where that stud went. So it's just right above the oil filler, and that's where it went. So if that stud's not in there, it's just leaking a bunch of oil. By the way, if you have any questions at all with some of these pictures, don't be afraid to just shout it out, raise your hand, and I'll answer them as much as I can. I'm just going through some pictures here. That's kind of what I'm doing. Try to be chronological as much as I can. I've got new seats now. There's one new seat inside the airplane, and these were what the old seats looked like. They were rough, to say the least. And the padding there was no padding, let's put it like that. Headliner is the original that's still in the airplane. The headliner is actually really nice. Cleaned up the plastics on the doors. The rubber that's on the door, so any of the seals that are on the door and on the window here, Cessna makes them still, but they are, let's just say, really expensive. So I was able to find some different seals and actually make it look really nice, which you'll see some more pictures of that later in the presentation. Alright, so this is a picture of the airplane right before I started taking it apart. Yes?
What is the plane, Joey?
It's a 1969 Cessna 150J. So it's certified in 1968, but it's in 1969 because that's the serial number. And it's got a Continental O200 engine. It produces 100 horsepower on a good day. So I was at A&P school, of course, so I was able to use some of the tools at my aircraft maintenance school, one of them being that gas can right there. I had full tanks when I decided to take the airplane apart, so I had to pump fuel out, and I made a nice donation to the aircraft maintenance program. As you can see right here, there is snow on the ground. I started taking this airplane apart when it was 0, not Celsius, 0 Fahrenheit outside. So I had some of my buddies help me out, take the airplane apart. Right there, that's my roommate Kyle. He's an A&P. He still lives up in Thief River Falls, and he works on CRJ jets for IFL Group, which is a cargo company up there. And these are just some various pictures. These are just some various pictures that I have of taking the airplane apart. There it is without the tail. So I took I think I had the rudder and the vertical stabilizer off at that point.
I have a question.
Yes?
That number and 5, will that have to be placed back on the plane when you're all completed?
Yes, that is, yep. So I have to replace that number back on the airplane. We're gonna do a vinyl tail number instead of this is painted on. And yeah,
Okay.
it'll be the
So
same
it goes
size.
with the plane.
Yep.
That number does.
Yep, that number goes with the airplane. And you can see one flaps up, one flaps down. That's just how the system is rigged in this airplane. So on Cessna 150 and most Cessnas, the flap motor is on the right side, and there's cables that run across and operate the flap on the left side. And I think I just disconnected the cables and left the right one up, and the left one came down. This is the tail of the airplane. It is dirty, greasy, and very gross. It's got, I don't know, Heidi was crawling in the back of the airplane. Heidi's not here tonight, but Heidi crawled in the back of the airplane to clean this out. I decided to throw my little sister in the back because, well, she's smaller and she can fit better. But I did have to crawl back there too. And just some more pictures. There's the entire tail off the airplane. I decided to take the entire tail off the airplane because I knew I needed to paint it, and it would just look better with all the parts and pieces off. And the headliner, where all the cables run. So there it is with one wing off. And yeah. As you can see, they didn't really, Cessna when it came, this is the original paint job, by the way. This is 50-year-old paint. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about why that's so awful later on. But Cessna didn't paint them very well coming right out of the factory. They just put the airplane together, sprayed the airplane with paint, and put another coat on and sent them out the factory. I don't know how many of them they were producing per day or week, but let's just say it's quite a few.
Is that door a different color?
Let's talk about that one.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So, with one of my adventures on this airplane, I used this airplane a little bit for some instrument training, and I needed some cross-country time. It's part of the requirements. And I was flying along with my buddy Austin Behrens. Maybe some of you have met him, and we were going up to Red Lake. JR's flying up on Red Lake. And I made it up there and flew around, had a blast, and then on our way home, about 20, I think it was 15 or 20 minutes after departure, there's a little pin, it's a piano hinge that's on the cowling there. That little pin inside that piano hinge just wiggled itself out, and then the door just flapped around the wind and whoop, departed the airplane.
Oh my God.
Right over the Indian reservation.
Oh my God.
So, I don't have pictures of it on this phone, but we get diverted to Bemidji, and we made the line guys laugh. We went in there and asked for a garbage bag and some duct tape. And they were like, oh, we've got some red duct tape. That's all we got. It's like, okay, I guess that'll make it work. So I put this garbage bag right over the door, put a big red X on it, and called it good and flew back like that. So we had a big target on us coming back.
What else about that story, Joey? What was the first time you did use that? You saw it fly off. That was the first time you used the camera, the GoPro.
Oh yeah, I got it on camera too. I had a GoPro mounted right up in the center of the airplane, and I saw it depart the airplane afterwards. And I had audio too. I think I said a swear word on that one. So this is the group of people that had helped me out. And the photo's a little fuzzy, but these are all the guys are classmates of mine, and the girl, she's a friend of mine that I think I met her before I went up to A&P school, but she lived up in the area and she was attending UND at the time. There it is without wings on at all. And at this point, we start to load up the airplane. And we're just wrapping up the wings so that way it wouldn't get scratched on the loading the airplane. And there's some other pictures. So these pictures aren't in the best order right now, so I gotta go find some other ones here. So here we're starting to load up the airplane. That's my dad back then.
There's Adam.
Yep, there's Adam. Pushing the airplane into its home, and we got it back. I thought there were some other pictures I had, but maybe not.
How much does it weigh without fuel?
Without fuel, it weighs, oh gosh, I think it's 1,100 pounds or so.
What is it?
Yeah, it's about 1,100 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's some pictures of us. Like I said, it was near zero or just a little bit below zero when we were loading up this airplane. So it was
Oh yeah,
just
Sammy.
cold outside. So that's myself, Mom, Heidi, my dad, and Sammy, our dog. My replacement came up. I think this is when you guys got home
Yep,
that night.
yep.
Yeah. So they had to stop at the casino.
Yep.
Make sure they got enough money to do the project.
How did that work for you?
We just pulled in, pulled out.
So we're loading up the airplane. It was a good reason to buy a new deck over trailer. So
Yeah, he bought that the week before.
Oh,
I think it was like the week of almost. So we pulled the airplane up on a winch and got it up there, blanketed up all the airplane parts, put it underneath the airplane. Maybe kind of a different, like a wooden rack to make sure everything doesn't fall off, and sent her on home. We didn't have any damage on the way back. It was a 4-hour drive, so we packed it up pretty good. At least no noticeable damage. There was one part that I think maybe got damaged on the way back, but I didn't find out until like 3 years later. It was a brake cylinder or brake caliper, so where the strap is wrapped around this tire, it was putting pressure on that brake, and it actually cracked one of the brakes. So I was like, okay, well, I didn't know it was there until the very last painted part that we did. It's just one pretty picture. And then now, this is kind of when the project starts happening at home. So this is Adam and some of you know Wilder helping put together a wing rack. So we built an entire wing rack to hold these wings because I knew it was going to take a long time to restore this airplane and we needed a wing rack. So that's what we did, we built one. And we got the wings on there. There's Adam pointing at a rivet.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm pointing at one, but I think Carol told us to oppose or something. It looked like we're busy.
Let's see here. I'm trying to find some more pictures, but there's none right there. All right. So yeah, this is what it rolled into our shed. Basically I did most of the restoration was in this shed. And I think it was about a month later I started taking the airplane apart. So this is what it looked like. This is the engine compartment, just forward of the firewall, but right behind the engine. As you can see, it was pretty old. It's dirty, messy. There's a lot of damage to the cowling, or not the cowling, but the baffling inside there. Needed to do a lot of sheet metal repairs. Luckily, I could do it at my A&P school. I could just go in there and do the sheet metal work I needed to do. And the baffling that's on the engine right now is the original baffling. And I was able to repair it to make it look decent. But it's rough. Really rough. And then I think at this point is when I started taking the engine apart. As you can see, the prop is off the airplane. And I'm taking cylinders off. Another reason why the engine came apart is because that stud came out, but also is making metal. This engine had, I think it was 2,351.9 hours on it, which is 500 hours past when it's recommended that its overhaul happened at. So it definitely had its useful life. And it was time to restore the engine and the airplane. Those engine mounts were sagging really bad too. The rubber was old and it was hard rubber. It was no longer pliable or movable whatsoever. So there's the engine core with all the cylinders off and all the spark plug wires hung up. And I think I got an engine stand from the SSU Aero Club to help me start taking it apart. I think Steve Breisdorf is using this stand now wherever he's at. And this is my friend Austin. He's the one that I did a lot of flying with back in that time frame. And he was just helping me take it apart. So he took off all the accessories off the engine now, so there are no more starter, no more magnetos, no more alternator. Yes, Luke?
Would you need a completely new CG, like everything?
No, I don't. The reason being is if I put everything that's back on the airplane, there is no major change. So, yeah, I don't. I did do some changes that do requires change in CG, but I'll talk about those in a little bit. So there are all gears. This is inside the accessory housing. That's, I think, the starter gear. That's your, it's at an 0200 and some Continentals, smaller Continentals, that is the oil pump. It's located inside the engine on the accessory housing. So if you have oil pump issues, it's either the spring or you have oil pressure pump problem, which requires removing the accessory housing, which is a job. More gears. I think I started taking, all the gears are off now. And at this point is when I started trying to get the two case halves to come apart. It was a bicker to get those two case halves to come apart. And my dad was helping me. I think we were just trying, and eventually it just popped apart. We were trying to come up with a tool to get it apart, and it just fell apart. So you can see here, just along the edge, and the entire outside of the portion of this crankcase there is this like little, it's a gasket maker, but there's also a thread. On all engine halves have a thread that run along the outside of the case. And this one, that's where that thread is. Whether it's Continental or Lycoming, it's always got that thread or some sort of thread there. There's connecting rods and camshaft.
What's the purpose of that thread?
That thread is kind of like a sealant more than anything. It prevents the oil from seeping out through those seams. And right here, I'm just disassembling the crankshaft, and there's the heart of the engine. There's your crankshaft. So now, fancy picture. Had some buddies come up. These are my roommates, Kyle and Tyler. I had one more roommate from college, but I think we were just down. They were passing through St. Cloud on our way to an aviation maintenance conference, and they just stopped by to help take things apart. So, and then I took all the engine parts down to Bolduc Aviation down in Anoka, and I talked to Kevin down there, and he was very helpful. He looked over all the parts while I was there for a few hours, and pointed out some things about the crankshaft and the crankcase. I was going through, I think I just passed my reciprocating engines course up in where I went to school, and this was just a really interesting one-on-one with him, just talking about different things. That's not my crankcase. That is a crankcase that I think had a crack in it, or it was just bad. But but he was just talking about different things to look for. And now I'm just starting to clean up some of the baffling. It was pretty bad, and you just remember that picture to see how black and dirty it is. After a little while, we were able to clean things up, make them look really nice and new. It took a lot of elbow grease, but we were able to get a lot of the dirt and dust that was on there for 50 plus years. And it's made some repairs. Made some parts. And then put on some new baffling material. That stuff is hopefully going to last a lot longer than what was on there. So one of the things that did happen with this engine while it was down at Bulldog, we found out that we needed a new case. There was a crack inside the case. So this is the main journal, or the center journal that holds the crankshaft. Yeah.
So did you find that crack before or after you fixed the stud problem?
Found this before I fixed the stud problem. I just gave it to Kevin and said, "Here, fix the stud problem." Well, he said, "Well, no, you need a new crankcase now." So, and he got a new crankcase, but it was nice to see that crack. That's actually a repair. Someone had repaired the crankcase sometime in this engine's life, and it just cracked again. So, need a new crankcase. But this is the only way they found this crack is through dye penetrant inspection. There's just no actual way to visibly see that there is a crack there unless they do a special inspection to it, and that's what Bulldog does down at their location. Just some more baffling. Yeah, that's the completed baffling right there. Looks almost brand new on some of those pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the start of removing all that scud in the bottom of the airplane. And this was all the way through the bottom, not just the tail. This was from the firewall all the way back. It was bad. Like, we would take just like a scraper out of the bottom and I think we got rid of like maybe 10 pounds worth of just junk in the back.
On the inside, Troy?
Yeah, on the inside. It was really bad. Just dirt and soot and oil, and combine those two together and they just kind of create this sludge. Dead bugs.
Oh, there's it.
There's the picture. So, Heidi is crawling in the back of the airplane. This is way in the back, like way in the back of the tail. I haven't shoved my camera through the tail of the airplane, and there she was.
You didn't know she could reach up through the tail?
It's harder that way. I removed the rudder pedals to do some cleaning underneath them too. That was definitely a chore in and of itself. And right about this time is when I got my A&P certificate. This is Bulldog's facility. We had a foreign exchange student visiting us for a short while, and she had helped pick up some of the parts with me. And now starts the stripping of the paint. I am not excited about stripping airplanes anymore because of this project. Anytime I hear someone stripping paint, I say, good luck. Don't talk to me. Or don't ask me to do it, at least. We use this stripper called EFS 2500. It's not a chemical-based stripper per se, but it is a hydrogen peroxide-based stripper. So it's you apply it thick, and you just cover it with plastic, and you wait. Take the plastic off, scrape it off, put more stripper on, and more plastic, and wait. Eventually you'll get down to a layer that's mostly primer, and then you're able to scrape it off with a stiff bristle brush. It's fuel tank covers. Fuel tanks were pretty rough, just dirty and whatnot. And here's us starting to strip off the wings. Covered it with stripper. I think we went through like 20 gallons worth of stripper.
Probably.
Yeah. It was not a fun job, and that took almost a year and a half just to strip the airplane because I had no idea what I was doing. You can't find any information online about it either. No one's really specific about how to strip an airplane, so you just kind of figure it out as you go. So now, this is the point where I started putting the engine back together. Of course, the crankcase was cracked, so I had to get a recertified case. Luckily, Bulldog had one, so I was able to make that change. And there I put the crankshaft and the connecting rods back together. Bulldog overhauled the connecting rods, and they told me they didn't do pretty much anything to the crankshaft. It was right where it needed to be. So they polished up all the main parts of the crankshaft and said, here you go. And they gave me new bearings too. So here I'm preparing just to make the two case halves together. So here we have some lifter bodies, which operate the valves on top of the cylinders through connecting rod or push rods. And this is the right before you put the two case halves together. You put gasket maker and there's another name for the purple stuff. Can't remember what it is, but I followed a Continental maintenance manual. It's not the 0200 maintenance manual. The Continental, which is the branded engine, they put out maintenance manuals that update their old maintenance manuals. So they made this procedure where you have two different gaskets, materials that you put together. And of course, you can see the thread here too. I put the thread in just how they told me to do it in the maintenance manual. And here's the other side. And then just take this one, lay it right over the top of this one, and then I put bolts through and clamp it together. So there's the whole engine right there, the heart of the engine put together. Started putting on cylinders. There's all 4 cylinders installed. We ended up going with 4 new cylinders from Superior Air Parts, and it went on really well. I'm glad I went with 4 new cylinders. I had a whole bunch of old mismatched cylinders on the old engine, so just going with new ones made it a heck of a lot easier putting it together. Had pistons, rings. All I needed to order was piston pins. And it went together real smooth. Started putting gears back on and started putting some accessories back on too. There was 2 additions that I made to this engine that the original engine didn't have. One of them was a Skytech lightweight starter, brand new, and then the other one was a spin-on oil filter adapter. Like Luke had mentioned earlier, that requires a change in the weight and balance. So I have to make this change on the weight and balance of the airplane, which is just mostly paperwork, and depict what's on the airplane now and where the weight has changed or where it was removed.
So do you have to change that if you're going to reweigh it?
If I'm going to reweigh the airplane, I don't really need to do that, because then I just do a weight and balance based on the scales.
Joey, is that considered a zero-type engine?
That is not, it's considered an overhauled engine. It's an overhauled engine, so it still has the original time that was on the engine, so it's still got technically 2,351.9 hours, but it's 0 times since overhaul, or major overhaul.
Does that go with the case, since it's a new case?
Yes, it still goes with the case, it goes with the serial number.
So they give you the logbook for the case that he had before.
It's a recertified case, so actually no.
Okay.
So literally they gave me the data tag and said, here, attach this to the engine. It is now this serial number, which kind of makes no sense to me, but it's like, all right, well, I'll do what you say there. Yep.
How about the cam wear? What'd you do with anything with the cam?
So the cam was sent out for overhaul. So they, Bulldog took it and they overhauled the cam. I don't think they did much to it besides repolish the lobes and the journals or where it runs, but they said it looked good. Yeah, they call it a particle inspection. So they put it in a big magnet and they magnetize it, and then they spray developer or gosh, what it's called? Can't remember what it's called now. But it's a spray with a bunch of ferrous parts in it, and these ferrous parts are super tiny. They connect to the little cracks that could potentially be on a part, and then they shine UV light over it, and that crack will appear with the UV light shined on it.
Joe,
Yeah.
you mentioned the weights and balances, so even a lighter weight starter will cause problems with head to toe balance like that?
It could, but not in this case. Basically what I'm doing is I'm removing a heavier starter to put a new lighter starter on it. So I have to subtract the heavier starter from the total weight and then add this lighter starter's weight at the same location.
In reality, it balanced out by removing 10 pounds of bugs from the tank.
That wasn't in the original weight and balance, so. Yeah, so some more pictures here. Part of the overhaul too was to remove inside this location, inside this little housing in here was an oil screen, which was on the O200s and some of the Continentals was the way that they filtered the oil was through an oil screen. So the oil would run through that housing, little particles would be caught in that screen, and at every oil change you pull that screen out and you look for little particles. That's how I found out my engine was making metal. So as part of an oil filter adapter kit, you actually have to remove that screen. That screen is soldered in, so I had to take it home and get it desoldered. And then here's back in the summertime, stripping parts, yay. Some of the parts on this airplane were painted with two different kinds of paint. This is not the original paint. This paint was painted by someone else, so it's kind of more automotive. You can see how it's really flaky. That's how most paint comes off parts, is it flakes off. The paint that I worked with, it would like goop up and then fall off the part. So if you put the stripper on, the stripper itself was not that bad. It was just an opaque liquid that would adhere pretty well to the side. But if that stripper came in contact with the paint, it would literally turn into glue. So I was literally working at just scraping glue off this airplane. And I think here is when I start to strip the fuselage.
Is that particular type of stripper required, was it mandated type of form to protect the metal, or, I mean, there are other types of strippers.
Yep, there are different types of strippers. So we can get into that conversation here real quick. So there's a kind of stripper out there called aircraft stripper. It literally says on the can, do not use on aircraft. Yeah, that's a real thing. So obviously was not using that stripper. I was using EFS 2500 for a couple reasons. One, I was doing it at home. EFS 2500 is a hydrogen peroxide based stripper, so if you hit it with water, it turns into water. So no chemicals. Another reason is it doesn't cause, I can't remember what the term's called, but if I got it on steel parts, it would cause a damage, or just any other stripper. If I apply any other stripper to a steel part, it causes some damage to that steel part. For this EFS 2500, since it's only hydrogen peroxide based, it doesn't cause, I remember the term now, hydrogen embrittlement. So.
And you couldn't soda blast that?
Cannot soda blast aluminum, it's so light. The sheet metal that's on there is about 20 thousandths, 32 thousandths thick.
Okay.
So literally it almost go right through the aluminum.
Because I know a lot of boats and stuff like that, they soda blast it to repaint them. But I suppose that's that thin of metal.
Yeah, we just don't want to reduce the material if we can eliminated it all. We just chemically strip aircraft, and that's the best way to go. Here we're stripping the fuselage.
More Heidi.
So there's some more Heidi here. We were using a mask. The stripper itself was not bad. It didn't smell horrible or anything, but you just stood in it for a long time and it would get to you. So we wore a mask while we were doing this, and you could see how thick we were applying that stripper. You couldn't even see the paint through the stripper. And then we would apply plastic and then go to town with a scraper. And then, yeah.
How much time was that?
How much time did it take to strip?
No, how much time was the plastic on?
It was usually about, I think it was about half an hour. I would just lay it on there and leave it be. Yeah. And then we just did sections. We just ran sections of the airplane and stripped as much as we could down the section. Some more stripping and stripping. So this is the point where I would grab a stiff bristle brush and some water and just circular motion around in that area. Just kept doing circular motions to get rid of that primer on it. And since I was using water, that was also neutralizing the stripper too. So any stripper that was on the surface, I'd be neutralizing it. And we get in this 5-gallon jug. After a while, it looks pretty nice though. And there's the entire airplane stripped, except for the belly. So, had to tip the airplane up on its nose, and just put some wood blocks down on the nose, and then I just got underneath it and put some stripper on it, laid some plastic up, and kept stripping the airplane. Had to get a special mask, or a special mask for it. And then there's the completed project, or at least the completed stripping.
Any corrosion?
No corrosion.
Wow.
Yep. It was an airplane based in Minnesota its entire life, or in the Midwest, so never had many issues with that. I got pretty lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Replaced a rear window. I got some more pictures of this. Let's see here.
Joey, has it got weep holes in the tail?
Say that again?
Does it have weep holes for water in the tail?
Yeah, it's got holes drilled in the fuselage for allowing the moisture to exit the airplane.
The reason I asked that is one of our members, I can't think of his last name right now, worked at Cessna. And his job when he first started there was to go put the Cessnas back on the 3 wheels when they were full of water and they would tip over on the tail. They had the crud in there. This was
Interesting. Yeah, I've got the holes. There's multiple holes drilled in the bottom of the fuselage to let the moisture drain out, and they were obviously plugged with the dirt and the bugs and whatnot, but definitely cleaned them out. So I think at this point, we're taking the rear window out of the airplane. So this airplane has brand new windows all around the airplane. And let's just say it was a little nerve-wracking putting in a rear window. The rear window, see, there's the window gone.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
We're doing some stripping there. So the rear window on this airplane, or at least my old rear window, was crazed, so you couldn't see through it at all. And definitely needed to replace it to make it look nice. And this rear window is a gray tint with a UV protection tint in it. It was in a very expensive window, and they didn't come fit to size. So you had to sand or remove material from the outside edge of the window. If you do it incorrectly, window cracks, like immediately. So I was sanding about a $760 window very, very slowly. I think it took 3 days just to sand it. And I had an orbital sander, and with I think it was like 600 grit sandpaper. I think I moved it up to about 180 grit at one point just to move some material, but it took a while because I didn't want to break it, obviously. And then I also had to drill holes in this airplane, or in this window too, because there was 4 bolts that went right down the center. You can see it later on. So I had to use a special bit to drill the holes in the plexiglass just to make sure it didn't crack. And here's us putting the rivets in. So my dad was standing outside the airplane operating the bucking, or the rivet gun. I was inside doing the bucking bar. We couldn't put screws back in on the rear window like we could on the front. So I did a little repair to the bottom cowling. I think there was some rubbing that was going on. And then here's we're starting to put the front window in. And then here's some plastics. So I replaced all the plastics on the airplane. So wingtips, tail tips, anything on the rudder. The only thing I didn't replace is the rudder butt cap, which we replaced about 5 years ago on one of the annuals because it's so bad. So I'm just lining up holes on those plastic parts with holes on the airplane. Then Heidi's cleaning out the gas tanks. Heidi did a lot of cleaning on this airplane. And then here's just kind of the beginning of the painted parts. And I think this was one of the first parts that got painted. And then there's a rudder hanging out. And Dwayne Cruzy helped paint the airplane. The only reason why he took my project to paint it was because it was in parts. He cannot fit a whole airplane in his hangar to paint it. So on some of my lessons, it's Dwayne's hangars in Princeton. I would go over to Princeton with some of my students and say, hey, why don't we go over to Princeton and do some practice takeoffs and landings? Oh, by the way, I've got some parts that I need to pick up. And most students were like, hey, that's kind of cool. It gives me a reason to fly, you know? There's a reason to this lesson instead of just doing takeoffs and landings all the time. So it was kind of fun. So this is about, I think it was March of last year. Started taking the nose wheel strut apart, just giving it a good cleaning. At about that same time is when we started taking wings to Dwayne for paint. I mean, there's multiple uses. So, like I said, I replaced the front window in the airplane. That one wasn't as bad to replace as the rear window. That was just a clear window that didn't need a lot of fitting. But this is what the panel looked like before I restored it, put some new stuff in it. And we'll just take a look at those yolks too. Those yolks are covered in electrical tape and the old plastic. So it didn't look good at all. So what I did is I took it all off and we sent them out for powder coating. And they came back powder coated and they look really nice. There's Heidi helping take some parts off the firewall. That's what we had it down to. There's nothing in that panel at this point. And that's how we sent it off to get painted. We didn't want to have anything in there just so that no paint would get caught in any electronics. And here the 2 wings are, I think maybe this is one wing. One wing is, we stored the wings in hangar 3 here in St. Cloud for a little while. We got them done when it was a little cold outside, so they needed to be in a heated hangar or heated location to cure a little longer. So we just asked St. Cloud and they said, yeah, just put them in the back. Here I'm cleaning off the fuselage or the firewall a little bit more before paint. I might have been just a little obsessed with how clean to get it. So there's a rubber baffling that was on the airplane before, so I put a rubber baffling on it again. It wasn't. It was kind of a difficult job trying to get that rubber baffling to cut right and go in the exact spot, and then rivet it too. But it was a good project. So you could probably see some writing here on some of these packages. It's about Christmas time when we did all this. So Santa had made some packages and put them on the airplane and gifted it to the family. And this is the battery box. Cessna did some weird stuff with their battery boxes, but it made kind of sense back in the day. Cessna would put kind of a tar in the bottom of their battery box. The reason why they did that is to prevent corrosion. They didn't have the luxury of sealed batteries back then, so that the acid would escape through the battery, would bend through, and go into the bottom. Well, that acid would eat away at aluminum. So Cessna thought, well, let's put some tar on the bottom and on the top to make it really hard to restore. So I took it all out, or at least most of it, and just painted it black and put a sealed battery in it. And this is strut, all finished up, all serviced. Well, not all serviced, but all finished up. Got an old carburetor, replaced the carburetor. Got a new overhauled one from Avstar, I think. And here's the engine. When I got done here in St. Cloud, I put it on. We got our engine mount powder coated and put it on a pallet, and then put our engine on the engine mount and made a nice little pallet we could move around with the Bobcat. I think I got a picture of that in here somewhere. Yeah, so it was stored in our shop over the winter time, and moved it into our shed to get final touches on it. We had a guy from the local paper come out and do an interview and make an article, and then we were putting the engine on the airplane and the engine mount and nose wheel too.
So is that nose wheel tied into the engine mounting?
Yep, it's connected right to the engine mount. Yep.
Is it easier to install it all as an assembly?
It was pretty easy. Yeah, it was only 4 bolts that hold the engine mount onto the airplane. Yeah.
What size are those bolts?
I think they're number 5s.
Metric?
No, and fitting, and number 5s, American National 5s. Think of it like, I think they're 5/8.
5/16.
5/16. I think they're bigger than that. The heads are, at least it might be 5/16 diameter on the bolts, but the head, I think it was a 5/8 wrench that required me to put it on there with. I'd have to look at a parts manual. So they're the old yokes. Nasty. This is the flasher beacon. I don't know why I got a picture of that. On the bottom of the fuselage, I didn't do this before. I've sent it out to paint, kind of stupid me, but these are called rudder boots. These go, or maybe steering linkage boots. They go on the linkage that goes from the rudder pedal to the nose wheel, and that's how we steer the airplane on the ground. Well, there's a little kind of leather boot that goes on that linkage, and just replaced them after I got the airplane painted. More picture of the airplane. I think I'm running spark plug wires at this point. Brand new spark plug wires. There's the horizontal stabilizer going back on. So put the horizontal stabilizer back on, and I think I did the elevator shortly thereafter. The brand new carburetor and all linkages connected. So there's 2 linkages that go to the carburetor, a throttle, a mixture, and then the third linkage that's in the inside of the airplane, or third control, is a carburetor heat, and that goes on the little black box right below the carburetor. And like I said, I put new windows in all the way around the airplane. This is one of the side windows. Also got new window frames as well. Our airplane, the doors aren't here tonight, but the old window frames had gotten water inside them. Cessna didn't drill holes in them, and the water had built up and froze one winter, and it cracked the frame. So we found some salvaged frames that didn't have that buckle or the crack, and we put them on the airplane.
So did you put holes in it now?
Didn't put holes in it. They didn't seal it either, so we're going to be sealing it. And there's the elevator. I put brand new bushings in on the elevator and bolts. So this is the elevator trim tab. Brand new plastic piece. This is so those antennas that are up on the tail, and you can see them back there too. That's for the VOR. And just had to fit them in there. There's a special block that's inside that little plastic piece too. And I did some plastic repair too. So this part goes on the top of the instrument panel. It's almost impossible to find, but I had all the pieces. There's just a bunch of cracks in it. So what I did is I got some black plastic weld, JB plastic weld, and glued them, basically welded them back together, and sanded them down, and got them repainted. They actually look really nice. You can take a look at it later. So right here I'm doing a kind of an inspection on the exhaust. I wanted to make sure there was no cracks in the exhaust or holes to make sure before I put it back on. So what I did is I ran a vacuum backwards, so pressurized the vacuum, or pressurized the exhaust, and squirted soapy water all over it, just to see if there was any holes in it. And there was no holes in it. And here is just kind of the inside of the engine, kind of the new looking part. So there's an old vacuum pump. Yeah, there should be a new one here soon. But on this airplane, it's kind of odd. Found this out recently, is that this engine had a wet vacuum pump on it, which is old. Old vacuum pump. And I had found a dry vacuum pump. Someone was just like, I don't want it anymore, and was removing it from his airplane. I said, all right, cool, I'll take it. And I put it on the airplane. You'll see a picture of that later. Inside the airplane, there was also some old asbestos-based insulation from the 50s. So I removed all that. That was nasty. And I put in a half-inch, I can't remember what this is called, but it's a half-inch FAA PMA approved insulation or soundproofing. And just by putting it in, got rid of noise. Like there would be trucks that drive past our house. It would eliminate that noise just by putting it in there. So put that all over the airplane. There's the new pump, vacuum pump. Put it on the doors.
What parts run on vacuum?
There's two instruments that do. You got your directional gyro and your horizon. So there's two instruments inside the airplane that run on vacuum. There are the old seats. Before so these seats were, I think there was a picture earlier.
The brown ones at the very beginning.
Yeah, but they were being taken apart. Ripping the seats apart, the old ones. That's just really old foam. And here we're putting them back together. Greg's helping as much as Greg can. And yeah, now they look really nice. I don't have a picture of the new ones, but there's a new seat inside the airplane. I was just told to hurry up and get this done with, so let's see here.
No, you have about 8 minutes.
Okay. Got the lights here. Just putting rivets up into the for the rudder boots. They're the brand new painted seats that need to go back together. Putting them together. Had to spray paint some of the springs in the airplane or springs in the seat, and those are the finished products, at least the seat frames. Look pretty nice. And on this airplane, we put in a brand new engine preheat system. Now, we don't run this system all the time. We just run it when we want to use the airplane. So I just installed it on the airplane. It's a new Tannis. Did some electrical wiring. Put in a sticker. And there's the plug. There's a junction box. What was really fun to do was that. That is a heating element on the oil, they call it an oil, or oil bag. It's your oil sump. That's the little element that's underneath those pieces of wood would not curve to meet that curve on the oil bag. So what I had to do is make some form blocks and some tape, but I live at a cabinet shop, so I was able to do that and made them adhere to, or made the element adhere to the oil bag. It's on there pretty good now. We got some new carpet to put inside the airplane. Took the old stuff out, put some new stuff in. We also have this, it's 1/4-inch foam underneath the carpet for soundproofing and insulation. We used adhesive to make the glue, or make the foam stick to the carpet. There's me trying to figure out how to bend that stuff. Then figured out I needed to cut out a piece of foam in order to make it to bend. And then we did Velcro on the airplane itself and on the foam, so that way it would adhere to each other. We're putting in the old ELT antenna. We now have a newer ELT antenna. I just crumpled it in the back, cleaning up some parts. Yep, Heidi's doing my cleaning. And here we're cleaning out the plastic. So this plastic was really old and yucky. I cleaned it up with some lemon pledge and it looks pretty nice now. So this is the landing gear without a step. There's a landing gear with a step. And here's the door seals that I was talking about. So there was 3 different seals that I had to purchase for this airplane in order to make it match pretty close to what it should be. And it's just like a half round, 1/4-inch, not even 1/4-inch, probably like 3/32 of an inch seal that went around the sharp edge of the window frame. And then put in I was helping with that one.
So, Sammy.
And then we put in like a 1/4-inch foam piece around the outside to seal the window, so that way we don't get any leaks through it. And it worked pretty good. And I think at this point I'm starting to do some little bit of a wiring project to the airplane. I mentioned about 2 months ago that I was changing from fuses. So these little black things here are fuse holders to circuit breakers. So I was doing some numbering of wires there, making sure they all connect. There's Cat. Basically I want to show engine without propeller, engine with new propeller. Safety wire. They're all going in the right direction. There's the spinner. And then here's me trying to fabricate the circuit breakers that I was putting in the airplane. Got a new circuit breaker panel there. More fabric. And there's the finished circuit breaker panel. It's just easier to run circuit breakers than fuses. I don't have to carry fuses around anymore. So I was able to upgrade circuit breakers. And here I think I'm doing a little bit of electrical wiring. Oh, yep. So this is the brake I was talking about. So this is the brake part that was broken. I had to get a new one because of that crack. That was literally the last part that was painted. And they found a crack. So there's the new one. And then in this airplane, we did a little bit of an avionics update right away. Since I didn't have a hangar right away here in St. Cloud, I decided, hey, I'm going to do an avionics update. So I put in what's called a Garmin GMX 375, which is a new ADS-B transponder and GPS, which here in St. Cloud, I'm also an avionics technician, so that was right up my alley. I think I put it in like 2 days, and it's just pretty easy to do. Also upgraded to a new what's called ComDat antenna. So this antenna, as you can see on the airplane, will accept GPS and then transmit and receive comm. So it's a 2-in-1 antenna. Some more radios, the wires going back in. Here we're washing the airplane. So this airplane sat at home, it was pretty dusty. And this was the night that we decided, oh, we're gonna get it to the airport. This was the night that I found out we could have a hangar at St. Cloud. And it was like, all right, we're getting it there now. So, wrapped it up in saran wrap, just like you would on a boat, put it on our trailer, and brought it to the airport. 2 days later, put the wings on, and put all the control surfaces on, and started rigging the systems too.
Yeah, and you were lucky to have your college roommates.
Yeah, they made a lot of the work really easy. They just came down for a weekend. They helped me put the wings on, put the control surfaces on. Just made it so much easier, made the project go by so much faster. They probably did like 2 days worth of work that I didn't have to do. Put plastics on, and now here's me putting flaps on. I think we weren't able to put the flaps on, so I did that myself. Put some more plastics on. There's the final antenna. So like I said, there was no transponder in this airplane. Only had a comm antenna, which is kind of unusual by this point in time with airplanes, with some airplanes. So I installed a new transponder antenna on the belly of the airplane. So I go to service the strut, and I figure out, oh wait, I can't put any air in that little valve there. So the valve was shot. So I had to get a new valve in order to service the strut. So here's what's called bleeding the brakes. So I got all the brakes together, and this is that red pot right there, brown pot, I don't know. It's a pressure bleeder, so it pushes hydraulic fluid up the brake instead of down it. And then on the other side, it just have a little bucket to catch the hydraulic fluid, make sure there's no air bubbles coming out of it. And this clamp is to help rig the elevator controls. Rigging is like setting up the controls to where the control surfaces move in the correct directions. It's got the right tensions on the cables. It's moving in the right angles too. I was able to do some work in the St. Cloud Aviation maintenance shop on the weekends. I think right here we started putting fuel tank bands in the fuel tanks. Here's some more windows, window seal. And then one of the funny things about putting in a GPS is you have to do this thing called a comm interference test. It's a lovely test. What happens is you put a radio in, you got the GPS on, and you have it on the GPS signals page, the satellites page. And what I'm watching for is this thing called a loss of integrity and no GPS signal. Well, let's just say that I put that radio in there, and I put the transmit button on the radio, and I lose GPS signal. And the reason why I do is because of the ELT. So I lose GPS signal when I transmit because of the ELT. Makes total sense. So it's because of the old antenna that was on the back. So I had to install a new it's called a 406 ELT. It's the new, basically the digital ELT. This ELT, which stands for Emergency Locator Transmitter, it's required on all airplanes that are normal category or utility, or most categories. And I had to install it in the airplane. So now if I ever go and crash, someone will know where I am within like 20 feet of where the ELT is at. And then this is the testing unit that I use to test the ELT. Here we're putting in the fuel tanks, at least trying to. I learned the hard way that I needed some what's called fuel lube on some of the hoses. That was hard. So I had to take the fuel tank out again, put some on there. But got them in there. Here I'm servicing the strut. So the strut is the part on the nose. So I need to work on that. And the only way to get the nose up is to put weight on the tail. So 250, those are 80-pound bags of sand on the tail. Also did some brake pad replacement, and I also replaced the brake rotors. And that is the final panel, actually. So brand new 170B, got that this past weekend. I was very surprised on how good it looked. Normally the paint's chipped on it, windows don't look that nice. There's a new Garmin transponder GPS. And then I put in an avionics master switch, or POM, and our ELT switch. And I think that is it for right now. So it's been a really big project. It's coming to a close, hopefully. Next week on Monday is the annual inspection. When it goes into the shop, this is the inspection that it has to receive in order to actually fly again. So hoping all goes well in that inspection, and it's been a good project. I will never strip an airplane again, but I'll definitely build another one. Thank you.